Hi there. My name is Kevan Lee. I'm the VP of Marketing at Buffer, a social media management platform. And today I'll be sharing why scaling your top of funnel audience has never been more important and how to do it. Let's start with this. Why do product-led growth companies win? Well, they win by building a dominant growth engine that allows them to scale faster than the competition. All these dominant growth engines have two powerful traits in common. First is a wider top of funnel. This happens through a free trial or freemium model. And it opens up the funnel to people earlier in the customer journey. It's powerful because instead of prospects filling out a demo request, those prospects are evaluating your product. And the second, your growth engine has rapid global scale. So while competitors are busy hiring new sales reps, building pipelines, product-led growth companies are improving onboarding and self-service to get value to more customers around the world in a fraction of the time. Let's get closer into the wider top of funnel. So with a wide top of funnel through free trials or freemium, you open up your funnel to people earlier in the customer journey. But where do these people come from? It's unlikely you're going to go out and start a free account today at an app you just heard of. So effective customer acquisition really starts from the awareness stage. Awareness leads to consideration. Your future customer has to know you, know their pain, feel their pain, know their options, and then acquisition can occur. So to widen our top of funnel, we need to go beyond the top. All the steps of awareness, activation, revenue, retention, all the steps are taken by your audience. If you build your audience, then you build your future. The way I like to think about it is this. Free helps you scale, but audience helps you stick. In times of great change, having a core foundation for audience development is going to see you through and it's going to deliver results on the other side. So how do you get there? Well, you accomplish this through brand and content. First, let me share 3 reasons why this matters. So number 1, CAC. So an audience development strategy based on brand and content is incredibly cost effective. You can develop an audience for $0. And even when you start putting money behind it, you don't have to put very much at all in order to build a strong working system. The second reason to focus on brand and content is systems. So focusing on brand and content helps you leverage these systems. You can do the work of building an audience with far fewer resources than you might expect. Yes, many people contribute in some way to brand and content, but the core resource needs are quite lean. There's a number of reasons why. So you can build brand systems. You can lean into content repurposing and outsourcing. You can do co-marketing. Those are some easy ways to get the brand and content job done. And then content scales itself over time through some sustainable channels and repeatable systems. So specifically on that last point, sustainable channels, this brings us to point 3 on why brand and content. The third reason is loops. You might have heard of this concept explained as a flywheel. And the idea is that as you build up brand and content work, the momentum of your distribution, your reach, and your awareness creates more distribution, reach, and awareness. You could take word of mouth, for instance. You tell people about your brand, people begin to know and love your brand, and then they tell people for you. Or you could take SEO content. You create the content, you optimize it, you distribute it. People find and discover this content. They read the content, they share the content, they link to the content. The search engines realize all this good stuff and they distribute your content for you. Okay, so we talked about the what and the why. The what, free helps you scale, audience helps you stick. And then the why, build an audience and you future-proof your business. Plus, you expand your top of funnel even wider. You build an audience because it's largely organic, it scales well, and it creates loop effects with word of mouth, channel marketing, and much more. So we've talked about the what and the why. Now let's talk about the how. So you build your audience through brand and content. Let's start with brand. So I'm often asked, when should a company start thinking about brand? And my answer is it's never too early to think about brand. And if you're at the point of asking, then it might already be too late, or at least you're behind. First, there's brand identity. This is the cohesive visuals and messaging that your customers receive from you. Then the second foundation is brand image. So this is how your customers perceive your products, your services, your company. And counter to brand identity, you don't control your brand image. Your audience controls your brand image. I guess the next question is, where do you begin? Well, there's a framework that the team at the very famous, well-known Ogilvy agency uses to come up with brand identity. And here's how it works. So the big ideal identifies your brand's purpose by finding the overlap between cultural tension and your brand's best self. Now, a cultural tension can be a state of being in the culture around you. It tends to go deeper than just trends. And then your brand's best self, this is what uniquely makes your brand great. And the goal is to end up with a statement. Your brand company name believes the world would be a better place if blank. The big ideal is a great and straightforward way to figure out your brand. If you're looking for other versions, a super simple version is this bullseye start with why model. A more robust framework is this total brand management framework. And this has you form a number of different brand documents, and they all filter up to the top of the chart: brand equity growth, essentially market share growth. Now, in order to succeed with brand as part of your audience development strategy, you'll need two things. You'll need to craft a solid brand identity, and then you'll need to prioritize brand management. So let's start with brand identity, which is the deliverable in all this. Once you do a brand exercise like the big ideal or start with why, you should aim to have a brand identity document. So by now you've probably realized that it's likely that many different people on your team will work on brand. Truly, everyone at your company affects brand in some way. Your designers, for sure, everyone on your marketing team, your support team, your product builders. So since this is a team effort, it's important to build systems. And like we talked about earlier, these systems are what become the sustainable, powerful loops that build your audience and grow your business. So here are some guidelines. I like to think of brand management taking equal parts proofreading and copy editing. So proofreading asks, is this correct? Copy editing asks, does this work? So when you're working on brand, you should constantly be thinking about both those concepts. The proofreading concept, does this follow our guidelines? And the copy editing concept, how well does this fit with our narrative? So with the content metaphor, let's actually dive into content next. Now, content is a tricky one to talk about because when you think about diving into content, you probably think there is already content everywhere, right? So let's back up a moment. What do we mean when we say content? Well, I believe that content is anything you've made that your audience can read, watch, or listen to. Bottom line is if you've created it and your audience can consume it, then it's content. So in this definition, we've greatly expanded the amount of content that exists. But we've also expanded our capacity for content. There's this chart I like to reference when I consider all the different ways to reach an audience. It comes from the creative agency Against. And it covers the marketing mix from beginning to end. If you zoom in, you can see blogs as one of the many, many channel types among many, many marketing mix options. And it's only one in this sea of options. But when we expand our definition of content, we have so many more channel types to grow in, almost all of them, and dozens of different channels. So for now, let's look at 4 different examples of content channels that work best when you're building an audience. We'll talk about blogs, we'll talk about search, email, and podcasting. Now, there are generally 2 ways to approach blogging. I like to think of it as the difference between riding the waves or building a beach house. Truly, the difference is a social-focused strategy or an SEO-focused strategy. Okay, so speaking of SEO, let's go a little further there. So SEO content can include blog posts, so there is some overlap, but it can also extend to the content across your landing pages and your main website. At Buffer, we found success doing it all. We optimize all our pages for search, and we choose article topics with a keyword strategy in mind. And we are big believers in the hub and spoke model, which looks a little like this. So if you're trying to rank for very competitive keywords or very high volume keywords, then you want to use that keyword as an anchor or hub page. Then you'll choose a handful of related long tail keywords that you can write supplementary or spoke blog posts that link back to the main hub. This is going to send signals to Google on the importance of your hub page, and it'll help build topic expertise across the board in the eyes of the search engines. And it makes for a really, really good user experience because all this content is linked and discoverable on your blog. So you have this hub and spoke strategy. You can supplement it with a backlink strategy. Let's jump next to email newsletters. Now, as you know, email predates almost every other content strategy here. Okay, next let's cover podcasting. Now, this is probably one of the hottest content channels of the past couple of years. It's seen a huge increase among listeners. We launched a podcast at Buffer a couple of years ago. It now brings in 20,000 listens per week. And that's not just new episodes, it's also past episodes. So podcasting functions in a similarly scalable way to blog content because the archives are so readily accessible and searchable. Now, typically you'll find that there are two different approaches to podcasting. You have your regular recurring episodes, and you have your seasonal narrative series. Now, for those of you with existing content strategies, or for those interested in what makes sense to post going forward, the idea here is that you plot your content within this matrix where the x-axis is performance. So that's metrics like page views, or likes, or shares, comments, rankings. Then the y-axis is alignment, which is a little fuzzier, but basically it's the higher up a piece of content is on this axis, the more in alignment it is with your brand's goals. So take a bunch of posts, chart them all within the matrix, and then you end up with 4 buckets based on the quadrant that it falls in. So you have content that sticks, content that needs a fix, content to nix. Content that sticks. So this is the content in the upper right quadrant. And it's content that's performing well and is highly aligned. Content that needs a fix. There's 2 different quadrants that fit in this category. This is content from either the upper left or lower right quadrant. It's either lacking in performance but high in alignment, or is lacking in alignment but high in performance. And then finally, there's the quadrant to nix. That's the bottom left quadrant. And this is content that's neither performing well nor aligned.